This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
And I'd like to welcome everyone to the February Agile Discussion Group. Our topic tonight is Bring Your A Game, and tonight we have a special guest named John Jorgensen, and Nitin will be taking the introduction from here.
Thanks, Bob. Welcome, everybody. I can't say enough about John or JJ. We're actually old friends, and we met at the annual Scrum Alliance conference many moons ago in New Orleans, pre-COVID days. And we really connected, and I'm very fortunate, to be a part of this and his journey and to share some of my journey with him as well. He's a very humble person. He has amazing credentials, one of them being the prominent CTC with the Scrum Alliance as well, or certified team coach, which is based out of a peer review. So it's not just, hey, take an exam, take a cert, and see where you're at. So you really have to evolve as a master. And he really is listening in the background, but we've even connected over the last few days, and it's just been refreshing just to get another Agile enthusiast who's also just willing to serve in the community and give back. And we're going to get a little bit into game theory, and I won't get too much away, but I do want to just say today's session is going to be a little unconventional, a little different than what some of us have seen. So please bear with us, be willing to be uncomfortable, be willing to get shocked or be surprised. It could be a range of emotions, and that's okay. Let's see where it sits, And again, without giving away too much, John or JJ, I'm going to give it to you, and I'll put myself on mute.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And it really is an honor to be with you this evening. Many of you are new to me, and this session, it's going to be very interactive, a free-flowing conversation, if you will. And so, whatever way you're able to be with us this evening, I just want you to know it's perfect. And I really do appreciate your taking time. It took something to be here, and I recognize that. And so, please don't hesitate to mid-sentence. If you have a question or maybe a comment, you can just push the space bar, even if you're already muted. And I believe that will temporarily unmute you so that you can speak while you're holding the space bar. If you're joining by phone, it may be a little bit more complicated. But I really do invite you to just interrupt me mid-sentence or mid-word and participate as much as you possibly can, because really the way that this evening is going to go is totally up to all of us. And all of us are smarter and more informed than any one of us. So now I've shared my screens, and I'm hoping you can see a slide. Can anybody see a slide that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Perfect. So before I dive into the topic, I'm guessing that something that unites us all is that our line of work is basically having some kind of change happen in an organization. And so whether you're practicing Agile or not, I'd like to ask you maybe just to put into the chat a number 1 through 10 representing your response to this question. How self-organizing and effective is your organization at delivering on its stated mission? So if it's just completely nailing it, the stated mission of your enterprise, then that would be a 10. And if it's just kind of on the way there, and you have something to do with that, maybe you put a 5. And if it's a completely lost cause, it's not even coming close, and it's just another way to turn a buck, then maybe put a 1. And I'm just going to see if we've got some numbers pouring in yet. Nice. Thank you for that. Okay. And if anybody wants to say anything about that, let me know. I'm just looking for 10s. I've got one person. Oh, I see a 10. Excellent. So is it okay if I speak a little bit to the person who's a 10? Because I've got a lot to learn from them. Oh, thank you. Okay, so Brandon, feel free to unmute. So I'm curious, what's the secret? How did you make such a big difference for your organization? Because that's really what tonight's all about.
Oh, well, these things are just they're spectrum, but I've only been at my new firm for a couple of months now. But I
Mhm.
just feel that just the whole team there really um really thinks forward for the client and just always puts them first, as well as making it a comfortable environment for the whole company. I've just been at a few other companies earlier in my career, and I don't know, I just feel like this one is very cohesive, so I gave it a high rating.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very envious. It sounds like I mean, the way that really work should be. You know, people are at ease and they're able to show up as their best selves, and then their combined efforts, like they fulfill on what the enterprise was created for. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's quite inspiring. Super. And so then, if I may, whoops, scroll too fast. I'm going to go to another question. How big of a difference do you make at work? And this is again just 1 through 10. Nice. Super. We have multiple people by the same name, so I'm just going to say, if you're a 10, would you be willing to share with us one insight about what does it take to make a big difference on a scale of 1 to 10? Being a 10, how do you do that?
Well, so let me tell you. Can I give my 2 cents?
Oh, please. Yes.
So I'm a contractor, so I have to go through a very rigorous training to the clients I represent, and because I work in the drug industry and I'm heavily into processes and framework. So there's no ifs and buts. So I report to the PMO. So everybody has to be mandated by the processes that's in place. It's stringent. It's heavily into compliances, governance, legal, GDPR, EU MDR policies, security, safety, data privacy. They have to go through it. So there's no ifs and buts on this one. I have a significant amount of training that and many different companies have invested heavily on me. I know this by a book. So when I go there, I just follow the processes, follow the framework, follow the entire thing step by step. And all these guys end up paying big penalties to the clients.
Mm.
And I don't see any let-ups. Obviously there's going to be a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And for the both the vendors, because I work with a lot of vendors in my programs and my projects.
Mm-hmm.
And for them also, it's hard because the quality of the resources it's really going down. Really going down. And as you've seen with the FDA, even agile, the concept of agile is now being thrown back at these type of projects I'm doing. This that's now you can do a combination of SDLCs, agile, and waterfall, but we really want to see documentations in place. We can't just approve.
Mm-hmm.
So so I don't. I mean, we even have moderators on HR. So even if my meeting goes past 30 minutes, I'm reprimanded.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how critical. And so these are competitive products. So you have to bring it out of the market very, very quickly, because if you delay it by even 2 months, somebody else is up there.
Mhm.
So I'm under a gun. So just so that you know, so I don't let anybody else slip anyway.
Mm. Mhm.
That's my 2 cents.
Great. So you're really making a difference by holding everybody to account. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't have a choice. I mean, they'll fire me. Either I'm fired or I'll fire everybody. That's how critical
Mm.
this product is.
Wow. That sounds very high pressure.
Pretty nice. Very challenging. Very nice. Very interesting. I can tell you that for a fact.
Hmm. Well, fantastic. And do you think that the company like is change part of your mission?
No, no, I really don't. I mean, I mean, even if I'm, they have been going through this because they're products, right? Drugs,
Hmm.
right? So it's, you have a bunch, of significantly talented people on this particular projects.
Mm, I
So,
see.
so you don't, there's no like a mix up or just to give you an idea. I mean, how tough it is, right? But a few months back, one of the managers for KPMG called me up and crying and crying. She had not slept in 18 hours
Oh no.
because the FDA deliverables that she can't meet because the quality of resources is just not there,
Hmm.
especially in big data, big sciences, and
Hmm.
the analytics that comes in, and this, so I had to really, get on the line with the clients and the vendors and, and the authorities to make sure that, they don't get burnt out and it becomes a loss for everybody.
Hmm.
I take the hammering, but at the end of the day, I have to show them options or what can be pushed back. If it, with agile, other companies, you can push this sprints from one to the next to the next. That doesn't work out with drugs. It just
Hmm.
won't. Right, and then you have to be cognizant because these are benefits to the humanity.
Hmm.
You have to tell these people that's, it's not just benefiting the program, it's actually benefiting you, and probably your grandchildren will benefit out of it. it's
Yeah.
it's a benefits out of the society. So when I give this kind of a pep talk to them, they all have to confine to, they have to get the job done nice and well.
Hmm. Thank you so much for sharing. That
And
was really
I
valuable.
can write a book on this, believe it or not, what I've gone through.
That would be great. If
Yeah.
if you if you do, I'll buy it. It sounds really valuable. So please do
Sorry,
share.
John. There are a number of people who were supposed to talk, and I took away your time. I'm so
No, no,
sorry.
no. It was at my invitation. So thank you for saying yes to my invitation. I appreciate you, Sam. Okay. So the rest of this conversation, it's really going to be focused on organizations that that are trying to change. They need to change, meaning their process, possibly their structure, maybe their product line. Like a lot of different things need to change in order for them to fulfill on the purpose that they were established for. And so within that context, I'm I'm going to present that basically there's a dilemma, and I think we got some sense of the dilemma, that Sam was describing, and I'm also going to be presenting that playing a game is actually useful when we're up against a lot of competing interests in order to achieve the purpose of the organization, which would require change. And so I'm going to ask a really quick question. You can again just put like a yes or a no inside of the text chat. Has anybody ever heard of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? Super. This is going to be a brand new thing. I'm saying all no's. One yes. Awesome. Frank, will you help me introduce at the highest level what is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight about? And it's okay to say no. You don't have to. Only if you want to.
Well, I guess, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So this knight, I guess he grew up in privilege, but he did not have good morals to be a knight, and taking a shortcut made him go through some challenges that ended up, I guess, I don't want to ruin the ending of the
You have
story.
to spoil it. There's no other way. Spoil it, please.
So he went through challenges, and then you're left with the question on did he achieve and become a better person at the end, but did it take his life or not? It depends on the way you view the ending.
Mhm.
Without spoiling it again.
Yep. Well, thank you. You're very careful that yeah, people get to enjoy the movie. If you haven't seen it, I've got a trailer here, and it's from a theatrical version of this Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it goes back to the Middle Ages. Some people theorize that William Shakespeare created it, and it may or may not be the case, but this goes back to like the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer, that era. It's very, very old as the story goes, and it's been made into movies and novels dozens of times. And one reason why I want to kind of kick off this conversation with it is that it involves a game. And I'm going to go ahead and play this, but I just want to warn anybody who's sensitive to images of talking disembodied heads or actors who are being depicted as self-immolating or immolating, then please don't watch. Otherwise, it's just a trailer that'll be done in about 2 minutes. So here goes.
Tell me a tale of yourself, so that I might know thee.
I have none to tell.
Yet, you have none to tell yet.
I fear I'm not meant for greatness.
We all fear, but fear can be a gift.
Do not waste this.
Okay, so jumping forward, what happens is that the Green Knight challenges Sir Gawain to a game, and he says, you can strike a blow against me, and then whatever you give me in a year's time, I'll give back to you. And Sir Gawain jumps over the table and lops his head clean off. And then he picks up his head, and his head starts talking and says, I'll see you in a year at a particular chapel, and you're going to get what you gave to me. And so the point of the game is that the Sir Gawain goes through a metamorphosis. He experiences a lot of change. And most importantly, the king, who Sir Gawain actually, he's in line to become the new king. This This is a game, is what the king says to him. It's only a game. And so the metamorphosis takes place. He learns a lot of things, and it's all just a game. And I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit and ask you, how do you respond to invitations? I have a game I can play with everybody here. I might invite you, but I'd like to know, how do you react to game invitations? So if you're absolutely a no for all games, and those people are really cool and I've had great success working with them, but you know, when I've been in training a class, some people say, can I not play the game? And I always say yes, it's perfectly fine not to play the game. Some people are like, oh my gosh, thank goodness there's a game. No play. Where are you on that scale? We could do fist of 5 if you have a camera available. You can just flash, you know, a number of fingers. Yeah. This is good. We see people all over the scale. Yep. Some are okay with it. Some are, well, maybe. It depends. I'll pass. Yep. I see 4s, 5s. Great. And so would anybody like to explain, why am I a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0? There's going to be no rebuttal, no criticism. I just would like to know, why not play a game?
John?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say there's no guarantee how it will end. Is what I'm saying.
Got it. Thank you. There's no guarantee how it'll end. That's a good point. Anyone else who's maybe a 2? 2 is maybe, depends. Say more.
This is Judy. I've played games, but I'm short. I'm usually the last one picked as a kid. So games haven't always been that much fun for me. Now, if it's trivia or something like that, I'm in all the way.
Thank you. I'm going to guess that there are a lot of people who've had a bad experience with a game. Yep. Anyone else want to say something about that before we move forward?
It depends on the game. There's 2, 3, 4, or 5.
That's right. It totally depends on a game. What kind of games would you not play?
I don't think I'd play a game with a gun.
Right. That's a high risk, high cost game, is it?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for that. So interestingly enough, there is a definition of a good game. It comes from Jane McConigal, and she's wrote several books. This particular quote comes from the book entitled Reality is Broken. It's pretty early in the book, like around page 26. So 4 elements go into a good game. There are explicit goals, or an explicit goal. There are explicit rules. There's a way to track progress. Am I winning? Am I not winning? Have I won? And there's a way to opt out or opt in at any time, I would say. Without these 4 elements, Jane is saying, and I am saying, it's not a good game. If I have a choice, I won't play those games. Without these 4 elements, count me out. I'm a 0. But with these 4 elements, I think I'm up for it. Cool. So we might want to look at, when we start speaking of games, we might want to look at, well, what's in the scales here? What are we putting at stake? Why would we play it, assuming it's a good game? So you can opt out. What have games got going for them besides just being a good game? Well, let's think about learning. So in Agile, a lot of companies out there are saying they want to go Agile, they want to be Agile, they want to do Agile, they want to play Agile. And there's a whole lot of different things from Agile versus not Agile. There's these values and principles that are outlined in the Agile Manifesto. And then there's like a bunch of different practices, maybe something somewhere in the lines of maybe 100 or so. Discipline Agile is like this compendium of different practices that don't offend the Agile Manifesto. And so it might not be, I'll say it's highly unlikely to be something that somebody could, on a moment's notice, just start doing and be effective as an entire organization. So when you're a change advocate or a change helper, and you're trying to help an organization get all the benefits that are touted for being Agile, you've really got your work cut out for you. Because some things are easy to wrap your head around and some are not. So is anybody familiar with this construct called the abstraction ladder? Sometimes it's used in like analysis of literature. Often in training, we'll talk about like at a higher level of abstraction, we have these values and principles, and at lower levels of abstraction, we have these, policies or tasks, directives, etc. And which would be easier to implement, do you suppose? And this is just a guessing game. Anybody can guess if you want to.
John, elaborate a little bit more. Which one would be easier, as in like what we're seeing on screen, like tasking, concrete telling, or like case studies, validations?
Yeah, here's some. So I put some numbers on it, but yeah, if you've got values, are those easier to implement than maybe instructions? Or yeah, what is easier of those two? Comparing them, I give you a fortune cookie and I say, go out and do this, or I give you a recipe and I say, go make this dish. Which is easier? Fortune cookie wisdom or following a recipe?
Following the recipe is a little bit more tangible, concrete, and instructions, and hopefully a potential outcome that if you followed everything, it's there, and also can give you some familiarity or comfort with the familiarity. But Zen philosophy could be a little harder.
Yep.
Or fortune cookie.
Yeah, exactly. It could take longer. And so what I'm saying is that when we're looking at an organization, a lot of different people changing, maybe their way of working, maybe their way of thinking, their way of interacting, it could be much more challenging to take, these esoteric, kind of abstract values and principles, even though there's only a dozen of them, and actually like applying that moment to moment in their work life. And so one way to make it a little bit easier to start taking something like that on would be games, specifically good games. Now, I'm not the first person to think of this. There have been many, I guess you'd call them business coaches, since like the 1980s up until present day. And they describe like these helping things that help organizations change their way of working, their way of thinking, way of interacting. And they use really fancy words. In the case of Michael Hammond, who I think the world of, by the way, he's got this book called Evolve Agility. And in his book, he calls them holding environments. So I'm saying, like, I'm going to get really abstract here, but the game space is a kind of holding environment. And a coach, like a business coach or an agile coach or a scrum master, which is actually a coach, they are a holding environment. So the purpose of the holding environment is to help people develop toward a later stage of development, or support the growing and expanding of skills and practices in the current stage. And that's one way of saying it, but there's more. Has anybody ever heard of Peter Senge? Peter Senge was an author, he might still be around, of a book called The Fifth Discipline, and this is about systems thinking. Very, very heady stuff. He calls them transitional objects or micro worlds. So it's really long-winded, but like things like lean coffee, or things like hackathons, or walkabouts, or future search. These are meeting formats for very large groups of people. And what I'm saying is they're actually micro worlds or transitional objects or games in the abstract sense. And then there's different types of games. So we talked about the difference between good games and bad games. And that's one definition. I'm certainly open to better definitions. So please let me know if you know of one. Simon Sinek, he's got a book called The Infinite Game. He's got many other books that are great. Highly recommend reading it. We're mostly familiar with the competitive zero-sum games. So playing the stock market is a kind of zero-sum game. If I buy low and sell high, somebody's on the other side of that trade, and they're buying high and selling low. So whatever I gain, they lose. That's a zero-sum game. Somebody has to lose in order for somebody else to win. But that is not all the types of games that are out there. There's these things called collaborative games. So everybody has to team up in order to achieve the purpose that the game has set as its explicit goal. And the better you are at teaming up and helping each other, the more you win. And then there's finite games, and then there's infinite games. And some games, like there's war games, some people have said that the war in Vietnam, the problem was that we were actually, as the United States, in combat with the Vietnam, we were playing a finite game and they were playing an infinite game. And that's why we decided to leave. It's not that we had more casualties than them. They had way more casualties than us, but they were going to keep on playing. Why? Because it's a bad game. They didn't have the option to quit, but we did. So we quit. It was a finite game for us. It was an infinite game for them. And then there's serious games. Sometimes we think of Monopoly or, I don't know, Tinker Toys or Legos as just a fun game for kids. But actually there are serious games we can play. And I've got a question from Nitin. How or why would one want to quit a game? It's a great question.
How or why would I want to quit a game? Maybe if I feel I'm not going to win. or maybe if I'm getting uncomfortable, maybe if I cannot live with the outcome, maybe it brings shame, discomfort, and whatnot.
Exactly. And so it depends on whether you're in a good game or a bad game. If you're not in a good game, then maybe you can't quit. If you are in a good game, you just walk away. You don't have to excuse yourself, justify yourself. It's within the rules to just stop playing. Why you would want to quit, that's going to differ from person to person. Maybe you achieved the goal. You've learned enough. You've transformed yourself enough. You've grown enough of your skills that you benefit more by not playing the game than by playing it. That'd be a pretty good reason why to stop playing, in my opinion. But if you're committed to somebody else's growth, maybe you keep playing because they want you to and they benefit. It's in their interest that you engage with them in the game. And so I'm going to back up a little bit. There's a game that we could start playing just in this session, and there's only 20 minutes left of it, but it might be fun, and it might actually be quite insightful. And basically the game goes like this. If somebody has said something that was valuable to you, you can encourage them by putting in the text like plus $10 or plus $100 and show them like, I got value from this. And the total currency of this session, it's all funny money, not for real, Monopoly money. But the total money is $10,000, let's say. And let's try to see if we can maximize the value of the conversation by giving positive reinforcements to people who are saying something that's valuable. They could be asking a question. I'm not going to be accepting any of the money. Only people besides me would be getting the plus $10, plus $20 in the text chat. Who wants to play my game? Go ahead and just put your name in the text chat if you want to play my game with the rest of the 20 minutes. Just so I know who's a player, who's not. Do I have any takers for my game? I'll give some rules to make sure that it's a good game. Here are the rules. You can't award negative dollars. If you award negative dollars, I'm going to ask that you be yeeted from this session. Miriam, would you like to say something? You're my guest. I invite you to. You can press the space bar maybe to unmute yourself. I guess she's raising her hand to say she's playing. Okay, she's just in for the game. She doesn't need to say anything. So I've got one player. I'm going to close it. Okay, nobody can talk. If you can text, though, you can play. You just have to put plus some number and then somebody's name, and you're playing. Okay. So that's the game. Nobody has to play, but I've invited you to. And you can join anytime and you can drop out anytime. And there's no penalties for joining late or dropping out early. So, returning now to this abstraction ladder. Besides games, there's these other things. We can call them micro worlds or transitional objects. Fables. Fables are really, really effective at helping change for organizations. Does anybody want to wonder out loud why with me? Or does everybody just completely implicitly agree with everything I've said so far? Haven't been interrupted once.
No, of course not. We're just being polite. Fables are stories, and I think they can be quite meaningful. You know, I have kids, so I have stories, and some of them moral of the story or a fun factor to it, and they tend to stick, you know, and they're relatable. So maybe that's why people use fables
Mhm.
or share fables and stories.
Mhm. They can apply to so many more places than a recipe. You can stretch
Yes.
them onto many contexts. And psychologically, telling somebody, you know, you really ought to do this. You really ought to be this way or that way. Most people don't like being told that they're broken, that they need fixing. But if you tell a story about somebody long, long ago and far, far away, maybe not even human, maybe it was a donkey, or maybe it was a frog, somehow it's okay to listen to the story and then sit with it and let it sink in. And it's not like nothing's happening. You plant a seed in somebody's mind, and pretty soon, while they're sleeping or while they're working, their subconscious starts to see patterns. The pattern that's similar to my life and how I might resemble in some ways that frog or that fox or whatever the character was in the fable. And I can start deriving or extracting wisdom from the story. Same thing goes for anthems. In America, it's not done very often, but in Japan, a lot of companies have an anthem that they sing as soon as the bell rings every morning. Everybody steps away from their desk. You sing the company anthem. You do what they call radio calisthenics. You stretch and stuff like that. And then you go to work. And what's embedded into those anthems is actually the company values and the principles. Sometimes some nursery rhymes have certain values and principles that they're trying to distill into, I guess, children, whoever it is that learns nursery rhymes and different songs. And so moving down the abstraction ladder, rather than tell people what to do. And by the way, besides just the narrow focus that comes with recipes, instructions, directives, rules, what's the downside to just telling everybody exactly what to do? What are the trade-offs?
Well, if you're telling people what to do all the time or quite often, then you don't know if they're taking ownership of a few things or how engaged they are, or you might be dismissing creative freedom. You might be making some assumptions yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people become prescriptive. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Miriam. And how much can you multiplex? Can I tell 1,000 people exactly what to do all day long? Is there such a thing? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Rich.
I also think that you won't get the commitment. People aren't you're not going to get that commitment or that energy. You're not going to get any of that creativity. If you're micromanaging, people don't actually participate, or you're not going to get that growth.
Right. So if, just as an example, like if I was in Sam's scenario, which is a very tough scenario, and I do exactly as I'm told, and then the FDA rejects our drug, what do you suppose my next action is going to be? You told me to, John. This is your fault. If anybody needs some sort of reprimand or some sort of negative consequence, it is not I, it is you. You are the master. You told me what to do. I simply did exactly as I was ordered. It makes no sense to punish or create negative negative outcomes for people that do exactly as they're told. Am I right? And so it could become actually very risky to give extremely explicit instructions for very particular occasions to the person who's giving all those instructions, because ultimately the responsibility and accountability rests with the source of the instruction, does it not? So maybe there's a Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. It lets people use their best judgment. They adapt to the situation, what their actual practice is going to be, supporting that. So there's these trade-offs, right? Games as a learning tool. Games as a way of pulling in people's engagement. Games as a way of pulling in people's ownership of their best guess about what will be effective in delivering on the enterprise's goals. So that's why I have it, that games are like super useful. Now, just because I say that, just because I say, well, I love games seem super useful, and I've got all of this information, these authors that are backing me up saying, you know, we need these interstitial objects, these transitional objects and micro worlds, lots of scientific sounding words that are backing me up. I don't sound like I've lost my mind. Well, that's good, but you know what? Like, there are still trade-offs. I'm worried when I'm going to take a game to somebody. Let's say that they're a leader. Let's say that they're a CIO, and I've got this engagement in front of me which says, John, we want to be an agile organization that is best in class at what we do from an IT standpoint. And we want you to help us. And I look at them and I see what they've got going for them and what maybe their systemic impediments are. And those impediments are created by the policies and structures which are created by the CIO and his executive team. How am I going to break the news to him? The one who needs to change is you, sir. So I had an idea. How about if we play a game? And from the game, he'll realize you don't play the game the way you do your work. You say A and you mean B. How safe is it to say to somebody with vast positional authority, you sit on a throne of lies? Anybody up for that game? I don't see a lot of takers on this one.
I like the imagery on screen, but that's all I can say.
Yep. So let's back up. Whole organizational agile transformation. I'm just going to say, since we are recording, I hope we're still recording. I'm going to say that out in the blogosphere and in the interwebs, which includes social media, I hear a lot of people saying that C-suite executives are so naive. They're so cavalier. Like, where do they get the idea that they're just going to transform their entire organization into some sort of agile organization? Like, they don't even know what that means. And so this picture, it's got a lot of green in it, by the way. This picture, you know, two folks out on the golf course, and one says, hey, Don't you think we ought to go agile? The other says, well, yeah, sure. The other says, well, what's the big deal? You know, you don't sound so confident. The other says, well, maybe we should hire some coaches. Why would you need coaches? Come on, we're practically already agile. It's just what we're already doing spelled differently, isn't it? Okay, that's one lampooning version. I don't know if these kinds of conversations actually happen on golf courses or anywhere, but that's what I hear people saying on social media. Does anybody else ever hear those kinds of descriptions of C-suite executives deciding to do an agile transformation? It doesn't need to be your organization. This is somebody else's problem. But does anyone else other than me hear of agile transformation's inception being something like this that I've described? Just go ahead and put a Y in chat. If you've ever heard such tales described anywhere in life, doesn't need to be social media. Yeah. Oh, nice. I'm not alone. Thank you. Yeah. So that's out there as some sort of mythology or legend. I don't know. I've never been on a golf course and heard that conversation, but it could happen. And so what I'm saying is that as a change advocate, as a transitional object, as a coach, you're kind of a mirror holder. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm using all these abstract phrases. Well, you know, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? When people are asking you as an expert of Agile, you might not be one, but I've been in that position. Tell us how beautiful we are in Agile terms, John. I don't always respond with, well, let me count the ways. And when you hold up a mirror and somebody who has a lot of vast power and positional authority, if they don't like what you're saying, what could happen? You could be shown the door. The camera's rolling, right? I'm saying this into the camera. I've been shown the door. Get off our property. The risks are real, I promise.
They're true. I must just echo that sentiment, John. Even at a small scale, I have been at a place where someone was saying, we need to have a retrospective on a Friday because one of our key stakeholders are available. Like, on a Friday, just for one person and not the team? And like, no, we're not doing that. And my contract wasn't renewed after that. And I did have an interview with this person before leaving. And that's all I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are occupational hazards of being a change advocate. That's what I'm saying. And there are skills. There are muscles that you can build, that you become good in dancing in the moment. These are what I would call the skills of a great coach, the skills of a great scrum master, the skills of a great game master. And it takes so long to develop. What if you could lower the costs and the risks of learning to be really great at dancing in the moment by playing a game? This is why games are useful. It can lower the costs. Instead of losing your employment or a revenue stream or a client, by playing a game, it's just failure inside the game. It's over when the game's over. And thank you for the time check. So I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, there are tons more that could be said about this, but I want to just kind of leave that to sit with and think about. Why get good at games in a vocational aspect? please give me your questions. I would love to say I don't know, but I'll learn with you. Or if I have something that I can give that's pithy and useful, I'll offer that.
Thanks, John. Very insightful. Could you just go back to the slide where you described the types of games?
You bet.
That was very deep for me, and I'm still sitting on that. But I wanted to just reflect, hey, when we talk about gamifications or let's play a game, with Scrum teams, but to look at it from this lens or this perspective is very interesting in how you brought it out, not only to, I'm bringing it to games in corporate, but you're bringing it games in humanity, such as war, be it good or bad or destructive, and I always have a little pyramid on my desk, and I say, there are two sides of a coin, but there are many sides of a pyramid. So I'm sitting with this right now and just a little reflective with the games Scrum Masters can play and how it would play out. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I was once mentored by somebody who would say, everything in life is a game. Because everything in life is a game, there's no such thing as gamification because it's already into a game. And so it follows that all meetings are games, all conversations are games. The Scrum Guide says explicitly the rules of the game. The person who mentored me, his name's Daniel Mezick. He's the one that said that, and he had something to do with that subtitle going on the Scrum Guide.
Oh, awesome. I love that. I used that before, and I even put it in the chat. So it's coming quite a circle for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can think of this in conversations as well, in meetings, like you said. Maybe they're conversations or meetings we have with people where there's a party or a view that needs to dominate or wants to dominate or come out as a winner and then take things forward. And then there could be perhaps another force that needs to come together collaboratively, either to oppose this or maybe take a collective force of one to another meeting or to another stakeholder or maybe up the food chain. There could be things where people are fighting external parties, be it, compliance, SOX, auditing and whatnot, or could be just the competitors of your product, right? Mm-hmm. Our competitors might be doing something differently and they're fighting us on. And I think this is very typical of startups that are disruptors, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think of games that way, that's what I relate to as well. So what do you do?
There's a type of game where the moves of the game are changing the rules of the game. And some of these games have gone on for decades online. And so tracking the rules and their complexity is the challenge of the game.
Very interesting indeed.
So on that note, we're at time. And so what I will do is end the recording. And again, thank you, John, for sharing these great insights. And I totally will look at playing games in a totally different lens now. I'll get nervous when my daughters ask me to play Monopoly because I won't know where that's going to go. But anyway, thank you, John.